My name is Wendy Potomsky and I'm the managing partner and owner of Retake Furniture Rentals. Retake is once again a proud supporter of the Canadian Film Festival and is working to contribute to the Canadian film and TV industry by making it an easy and sustainable place to do business. Retake provides sustainable short and long-term furniture rental options to meet production schedules and product needs. Retake also understands the importance of set design and the dynamic nature of the film and TV industry, which is why we created a company to specifically support Canadian filmmakers. Retake can assist you in setting up your production office with sustainable alternatives to keep your team working safely as we all head back to work. We use sustainable approaches to minimize product going to landfill, which means any product supplied by Retake is helping to support the circular economy. Our in-house upholstery services can tailor our product to meet your set design requirements and match your color schemes. Contact us to discuss your office furniture needs. Our goal is to help you get back to work as safely and efficiently as possible. Stay safe, everyone, and enjoy the films and shorts at this year's Canadian Film Festival.
Celebrate Canadian filmmakers on Super Channel Fuse with an exclusive homegrown event.
I'm ready.
Go.
The Canadian Film Fest, presented by Super Channel, brings this year's festival into your home for a second year as a virtual experience.
Goodbye.
Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night until April 18th. Enjoy the premieres of indie films and shorts from critically acclaimed and up-and-coming Canadian producers and directors.
And this is where the donkey starts talking.
Immerse yourself in this inspiring and spirited event, both on air and online, with live Facebook Q&A sessions that follow the films.
Makes sense.
Start it.
Experience the Canadian Film Fest, proudly presented by Super Channel.
Welcome to the Homegrown Shorts Q&A. Hi, my name is Richard Pierre, and I am one of the programmers at the Canadian Film Fest.
And I'm Mark Kishori. I'm also one of the programmers.
And right up, we're going to talk with Zoe, the director of Loon.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm the writer-director of Loon, or Moon in English, and I'm with my producer Mélanie Saint-Arnaud-Dubois, with whom I worked very closely to create this film. So,
hi
thanks
everyone
for having us.
Hi, thanks for being here, guys.
So why don't we just jump into it, because we don't have a lot of time to chat. So tell the audience about what your inspiration was for this movie.
So my inspiration was mostly, I was very interested in the kind of like moment where I was fascinated with kind of like the stigma that ex-convicts face when they come out of prison, especially women. That was just a subject. I felt like we had a lot of fictions like Orange is the New Black that talk about like the life inside the prison, but I was interested in the aftermath. That was also something that I really didn't know much about, and that I thought it was a psychological situation that was very rich, that had a lot of different dynamics going at play, and so I started, I found an ex-convict that was willing to speak to me about her own experience. I had already written like a draft of the movie, but when I met her, I was like, oh my God, like I was so off. Like after I spoke to her, she was very generous and she told me about her story, and she really like, I didn't base the film off her story, but she gave me kind of like the emotional truth of the story. So then I rewrote the film, and yeah, I kind of like developed from there. And I also imagined this kind of world of particular characters that would also coexist with her and kind of like at the same time help her and be also how can I say, obstacles to her redemption. So yeah, for me it was about that special psychological moment after when the character comes back to society. Sorry, I speak French mostly, so the words don't come, but it's the first question. I still have time to. So yeah, that's it.
Melanie, do you want to talk a little bit about you produced the film? Do you want to talk a little bit about how you got involved and what that was like?
Yeah, well, Zoe came up with an idea. It's been our second short film together because we were working. We actually went to school together. Third film, it's true. And so we already knew each other, and she knows how much I like having some more like social subjects. So she came up with Lune Moon, and I really fell in love with it, and we just worked on it from there. And yeah, I think she did something great. I think it's really a very woman-driven story about self-esteem too. That really really got me into the story. So yeah, basically we went from there trying to relate to some real people in life that went through that kind of situation, and that really helped us fuel the entire development of the story and then production. So yeah, and Joanie, our star too, really
It was amazing, by the way.
Yeah, she really just blew our mind. She didn't Zoe, of course, but then when she came in, it was just, but Zoe, if I'm correct, you wrote the story for Joanie, right?
Yeah, I think I presented like the second version of the script to Joanie way before it was financed. I saw her in like a web series or a TV show, and I was just like, oh my God, this actress is so like, she's so compelling and she's so like real in all her performances. So I really wrote the film with her in mind. And it's funny because I met her, I didn't know her personally, but when I first met her to present her the film, she just read the script and she was like, well, that's me, like that I'm cool, like this is happening, like this is I'm 100%, like she was on board from the get-go. So it was nice to kind of like have her involved from the very beginning, even before we knew if the film was going to be made or not. And I think like one of the big things about this film is the notion of dignity and hope. Like when I met the first ex-convict, what really like struck me was the dignity that she had, and she was very like so smart and dignified, and she was very lucid too, and she was so funny and touching, that woman. So I wanted to have also that sense of dignity. I think the character is trying to get her dignity back, or there's really the notion of dignity and also the notion of empowerment, like self-empowerment that doesn't come from anybody else but you. I think the kind of like original premise of the film is that she's going on a date with a man, but I don't think it's really about the date finally, so I think she's really I shouldn't be jinxing. Spoiler alert. No, I'm just kidding. But I think the notion of hope also, and I wanted to have the message that like you can't like with your own. It's really about your own power, your own will. So yeah, and I think Joanie brought that to the character, that dignity and that tenderness. She was very tender towards her character, and very she had a lot of empathy, and I think those feelings were important to tell that story.
We're short on time, but I want to sneak in a couple more questions in here. What I really love so much about this film were how great the characters were. They're all very distinct personalities, and in a way it's so much about the lead character's relationship to all these characters, right? Her relationship to Raul, her relationship, her desire for a relationship with Mr. Ayuchi, her relationship to her mom. So I want to ask both of you a little bit about that. Melanie, if you could talk a little bit about what the casting process of finding all those other characters was like. And then Zoe, I'd love to hear from you about what the writing process was like for that. Like, did these characters just come to you? Did you really have to struggle to find them? I'd love to hear from both of you on that.
Well, it was a very huge part of collaboration for choosing the cast. I feel like even with Véronique, her another producer with me, and with Joanie, because it was really, we knew it was Joanie that was gonna be the first role. So obviously it was finding the great match. And in Montreal, people are just so accessible, and so all the actors are very accessible, and so it was very easy to have a lot of actors come in and just play with Joanie, and from there we just had this like me, Zoe, and Véronique really talked about what we liked about each relationship and what it brought to the storyline, because it would totally change the storyline. For Raoul, we had two totally different actors. It could have been a totally different movies. But yeah, maybe Zoe can talk more about that, because she was, in the end, she's the one that cut everything to what she wanted for her vision,
Yeah, I think the characters, I don't know how they come. I really like writing characters. Like, I think it's definitely part of the things that I really love to do as a filmmaker. Sometimes I just base them off like one or two people that I know, and I start with a canvas of like a real person, and then I add some layers, and then the actor comes in and adds more layers. So I think that's more how I work to create characters. Some of the roles we didn't audition. For example, Bab's mother. She's a very, very good Quebec actress, and we just met her. Basically, we just invited her to meet us with Joanie to see if the current was right. If she felt interested by the role, we just spoke to her, and that was instantly like right. It was the same thing for Raoul's flame. We just gave it to her because it was also a small role, and I knew that the actor Guillaume Gauthier was perfect to play it. So some of the roles were not auditioned, but for the character of Raoul, we auditioned, I think maybe 10 guys. And I was more, we were kind of searching for it. I think throughout the audition process, I was searching for who was Raoul. But when Alexandre Lavigne, the comedian, when we finally picked him, he made a proposition in his audition that was something, but after we chose him, he took it to the next level. Like, it was just, he just sent me a selfie of himself with the little like aluminium glasses, and he was like, I think we got Raoul. And I was like, oh my God, like he had those McLovin vibes, I was just like, oh my God. And I sent him a playlist, but there was one song that he really liked of the playlist that it was like, this is Raoul's energy. And that's the song you hear in the club scene. Right. But that was really the song that Alex liked. And he was like, that's the one I'm going to dance to. So anyway, so it was that kind of process. It was part audition, part intuition. But we had so much fun doing it, and we're so happy with the cast. They're all so good. Even the little girl, I think, like in the restaurant scene, that's Mr. Ayush Needs. She was amazing. Like we were like crying of laughter when she was doing her part. So it was just very blessed to have this cast.
All right, Zoe and Melanie, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we don't have more time to chat. I know we have a million more questions for you about the film, but thanks again for being a part of the festival. Thanks for sharing the film with us.
Thanks for having us. We're so happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the screening. Bye.
Thank you. And up Next, we are chatting with the filmmaker behind Just for the Record. Boyan, talk to us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about, how the film started and what the inspiration for it was?
Well, to be honest, our art director, Nicholas Tepkovic, he's a great fan of all sorts of robots and robotics and stuff. Unlike me, who like only robots who can do some specific tasks like vacuum cleaner robots and stuff like that. So, but we made sort of compromise there with making a film about a robot, but actually a robot with a purpose. And I came up with an idea for it to be a recorder. And yeah, and that's how we started to roll the thing. And one of the other things was we wanted to try the technology of photogrammetry that we are about to use for our first feature. I have a little poster here called Twice Upon a Time that we are preparing. And we wanted to test this technology of 3D scanning of actually physically made set designs. So we basically made everything in one attic, and we then recreated it digitally with scanning. So it was a process that we wanted to try for the feature, but actually the idea for the film, came from our goofing around with robots. But then realized when we got to the point that it was a recorder, sound recorder, that it was a story about memory.
Mm-hmm.
But then a bit later on in the process of script writing, it came to us there's actually a story about what we project, what we play to each other, and then how important it is that we are aware of our batteries when they're leaking or when they're not, just in any case, and that we project the things that we believe in.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way to put it.
Thanks.
I have a question here from Malik. Can you talk a little bit about the character design? Because the character is so kind of, it's a very deliberate and specific design. You know, he kind of looks like he has eyes. He kind of looks like he has a mouth. So I'd love for you to talk about, what the process of coming up with that was like with your team.
It actually, the first thing that we started off was that I wanted the buttons to be the eyes. And then we started from that, and we worked quite some while on how actually the eye can have some sort of emotion, because it's a robot and we didn't have the eyebrows. So we played a lot with those shutters inside to create specific emotions, and for it not to be like more human-like. And it was a challenge, but actually it was one of the easiest characters that we did, because as most of character designers know, the humanoids of all kinds are the hardest, because they have so many muscles and everything, and it's just takes a lot of time to make them and to animate them. So basically we didn't have a lot of problems with rigging, because we were looking for very simple structure with only one wheel, only one moving part of the body, and basically one more ankle there of a kind. So we were going for something simple, and for something that will put the main focus on the eyes, put the main focus, and that's why we put also the light in the eyes, and the recognizable colors of record and play to stress that part.
One of the other questions that I had was, you talked a little bit about photogrammetry before. I feel like audiences aren't generally familiar with the process and the workflow of 3D animation. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit about how does it, what are the ways in which it's very similar to traditional filmmaking, and what are the ways in which it's different, and what are kinds of the things that you and your team have to think about when you're making a piece of 3D animation, as opposed to, a traditional film where everything is in front of you and,
Yeah, it's well, it can be quite a challenge, because depending on what amount of photorealistic actually rendering you're going for. And with Just for the Record, I think that will never go as photorealistic as this film, because we just wanted to try how it feels, and we are more with our studio fans of more cartoonish things and more character design that is, I guess, more funny and less real. So with this one, we wanted to try, and we wanted to bridge the filmmaking as is, with like set design, with the scenography, with like props and everything real and everything very tactile, because we wanted to use that sort of texture of a real film. And that's why we brought photogrammetry in. But in general way, with 3D, depending on the scale of the project, we're sometimes choosing characters that are easier to rig and easier to animate, rather than going to something more complicated as the live action film. And for me, the biggest reason, because I do also live action and documentaries, the largest difference is creating of the new world. And if you want to go into like go crazy with your imagination, then you go for animation. And yeah, they're different teams, they're different, like for me it took me like 3 years to figure out what the rigger does, and the riggers are something that you definitely don't have on live action. They put bones in the model, to put it simple. They probably will kill me now if they hear this, but like, so they're sort of anesthesiologists of our time, for 3D animation. But there are different things, but basically we do the same. We go for emotion, we go for points in the story, and I also act all the shots. So even if you see now the robot, I can show you the videos of myself doing the same stuff as robot. So we have basically.
Oh, really? Okay. So is that? Do you use that as a reference for when you're animating the robot?
Yeah, for animation. Yeah, right. And you probably saw at some points with some making offs of animation that animators keep a little mirror next to their computer, so they can also practice the phases and stuff. So yeah, there are a lot of similar stuff, but for animation only it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to make a shot, sometimes like a week.
So how long did it take to put this whole short together?
For us, this one was a bit over a year, year and 3 months, something. Yeah.
All right, William, thank you so much for chatting with us. We would obviously love to talk more about your process because it sounds amazing. And we love the film. I got to just say that once more. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot and good luck. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, stay tuned. Bye. All right, we're back on and we're talking with the team behind Bad Omen. Solar, tell us about your team here.
All right, I'm joined by Nikolai. He's the cinematographer of the film.
Hi there. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of the festival.
So yeah, let's just get into it and say, let's talk about what the inspiration was behind making this movie.
The inspiration, well, the real inspiration came out of frustration, because when I was speaking to my fellow Afghans from Afghanistan here, diaspora, there's a few of them who are like pro-war, because the pro-war of like having the United States there so the war can continue. And they're seeing the positive sides to it, which is like, sure, the cities are actually progressing a lot. They're having a lot of developments and there has been a lot of progress made. But they're not realizing what's happening on the village side of the country, like the countryside where there's active war going on. And if you don't have a family member or you don't have a friend, you don't know somebody whose mother is a widow and what they have gone through, you don't really realize the consequences of this war. Because to you, it's a war and it's a number because we have become immune to it. All you see in the news is 20 people died, 30 people died, but you never realize that when these 20 or 30 people die, 20 or 30 houses gets destroyed. And there's usually the men who are the breadwinner. And usually it's one man who is kind of providing for the 5 to 10 people in the family. So when that man is out of the picture, it's the women who have to then take over the burden. But because the society doesn't have all this, they don't have the resources available for these women to succeed. So then they have to kind of like make it work. So I'm raised by a widow, and I've kind of firsthand witnessed what they go through to raise children and to survive in that society. So that's where the inspiration came from the movie.
Right. Did you, were you the kind, like the boy in the film, to not want to go to school and give your mom trouble in the mornings?
I was a horrible son. Like my company is called Bad Son Pictures.
Oh, fantastic.
Like, yeah, that Jalal is totally me, who doesn't want to go to school, but when he's back, he wants to eat all the fries at home. And yeah, I was that kid.
That's great. Nikolai, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about, one of the things that's so great about the film is how kind of formally specific it is in its cinematography, right? A lot of it is shot straight on, and despite the kind of stress that the lead character is going through, it's very calm, it's very still. So I'd love to hear about sort of what the cinematographic vision for this film was from you.
Yeah, I think that was one of our first conversations that Salar and I had, was, you know, looking at portrayals of the Middle East and seeing, you know, kind of subverting expectations or like these kinds of cliches or tropes. Depictions often are, like, to put it bluntly, are pretty racist of the Middle East. And so we thought it might be like too easy to go handheld, like chaos with our character. And we really wanted to, like you say, find the most formal position for the camera, which meant Pari, you know, she's kind of stuck in this situation and she's navigating through it. And we didn't want to bring chaos with the camera. We didn't want to draw attention to it. We wanted Pari to have her own agency throughout the frame. And it's the powerful movement of her character that I think is so moving in throughout the whole picture. And we didn't want the camera to bring too much of an impression on that.
Right. Salar, as I understand it, you've shot stuff all over the place. What was it like shooting in Kabul? Did you have any kind of specific challenges that, you know, people shooting here wouldn't think of, or was it easy?
Well, I was blessed to have Nikolai, and honestly, Nikolai he's super talented, but he might be a little bit crazy for his own good. Because when I was pitching the movie at York for my thesis, he just walked up to me like, yeah, he'll shoot it. And we were like, oh. I didn't know if he's serious or not. And then we met and we talked, and we had worked before, or we worked after that on one of my other shorts. So then we flew there. And so there were a lot of challenges, because whenever you take out a camera in a public spot, suddenly people start to gather. Unlike in here, you're like, hey, please don't talk. They don't talk. And there you're like, you don't talk. They're like, so what are you shooting? Can I be in it? And then there's a sound rolling. So we had a lot of those. Whenever we were shooting in the public environments, the trouble was with the traffic. So Nikolai would put a camera in a way where we don't attract too much attention. So he would get into like getting the camera into the position and start rolling. And I think I was frustrating Nikolai as well with one thing, where he would want me to see the frame, which makes perfect sense. But I had so much faith in Nikolai that I'll be like, okay, he's behind the camera. Let me just get close to the cast so I can see whether they're performing or not, because the screen on the camera is just like 5 inches. So in public spots, my production fixer, Parvez Arifi, he did a fantastic job of controlling everything. He went above and beyond, like making sure the traffic is controlled and everything is sorted out. And when we were shooting indoors, because we didn't have any lighting, so we had to depend on the natural light, on the sun. Nikolai had to depend on the sun. So we only had a window between 8 to 3 p.m. to shoot. So indoors, there were also challenges, but again, Nikolai kind of made it work. So we were happy, and we had to be very like on point. As you see, certain frames are repeating itself throughout the day, whether it's like scenes in the house in the morning or scenes in the house at night. So Nikolai would take the measurement to measure the distance because we wouldn't have any marks or anything. So we would just like take the measurement, go shoot other areas and come back and retake the measurement just to make sure we are hitting all our points. So challenges were there, but the crew was fantastic. It was a small crew, but they were very talented and they just wanted to like make it happen. And everybody, like, sure, I'm the producer and the director or the writer, but Nikolai is cinematographer, or my Parvez Arifi, the fixer, or even the lead actress, everybody did more than 2 or 3 jobs. Like Nikolai, you could say he was also an AD, or he was like also his gaffer and grip and everything, and vice versa. My fixer was like doing everything. So everybody was equally involved. I think by the day 2 or 3, we were so much into the movie that everybody just wanted to make it happen. Like there we,
yeah.
All right. Oh, Amar, you got one more question before we wrap up?
Yeah, Nikolai, just tell me a little bit about it. I mean, it sounds like, you know, Salar talked a lot about the work you're doing. Was it a different experience for you as opposed to other stuff you've shot, and in what ways? And then before we go, I just want to ask Salar about the casting. You know, your lead is so kind of amazing and gives such a grounded performance. So I'd love for you to talk about that as well, but why don't we start off with Nikolai?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of just resources available, when I'm shooting here in Toronto or other parts of Canada, you know, I usually have a crew or lights and equipment and stuff like that. And even in Toronto, I have done some like lower budget projects where I kind of have to be a bit more self-sufficient. So I think that was just a challenge, was becoming accustomed to the fact that I'm going to be working with people with a you know, a pretty big language barrier, and then being self-sufficient. But as Salar said, people kind of stepped up to the plate and were eager to learn, and it kind of became a bit more of a familiar process like I have here. I think the biggest difference for me was just the kind of pace of work. I think halfway through the film, I started to panic and I didn't think we would be making our days. But Salar kind of just sat me down and reminded me that like we're in a different place. People go by their own, you know, kind of timeline here, and that we would actually complete the film. And when he kind of gave me that reality check, I was able to relax more, and it was actually a really enjoyable process. Like if we ran out of available light, or if you know, a location didn't work out, there was always a contingency plan, and we had the ability and the privilege to kind of just like rework that and move forward until we had completed the film. And I think that's just a testament to Salar's plan and our fixer's plan, and just everyone kind of having this synergy that Salar was describing in order to get the film completed.
Fantastic. You guys have a lot of great things to say about each other. Salar, if you could just, you know, close us out by talking about, you know, how did you find your lead?
So I was actually thinking of somebody else for the film, and I didn't have access to that movie, so I was watching the trailer, and in the trailer I saw Ferishta in a very small role. She just has a few moments in there, and I was like, okay, she's the one. But because Afghanistan doesn't have like a standard industry where there's managers and agents, and she didn't have any social media, so finding her was a bit struggle because I didn't have her phone number. I didn't know who to contact, and the filmmaker who casted her out contacted her but couldn't get a hold of anyone. So eventually we did get a hold of her, but we had to go through a big process of like, if you know her, like just at 3-4 different channels to finally get a hold of her. And then once we met her in person in Kabul, she is very talented, and she's very different from your average, the perception that we might have about Afghan women. Like she's very bold, strong. When we met her, and her presence was felt, like she was right there. And she also trains other women like martial arts and gym. So yeah, her personality was very strong, and working with her was like, she's probably one of, if not probably one of the finest actors out of that country right now.
Amazing.
And that's a great spot to end on, Salar and Nikolai.
We also just want to congratulate you on your Canadian Screen Award nomination, by the way. So
yeah, we are super excited about that. Just found out 2 days ago, Canadian Screen Live Action Short Drama. I don't know.
Thanks for hanging out with us, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Salar and Nikolai.
Bye, Amar. Bye.
right, now we're talking with the team behind ANIKSHA, and let's kick it off with our director, Vincent.
Hi.
Vincent, tell us about your team that you brought with us, with yourself today.
So Dan, who's the editor of the film, and
Hello.
Nishi, who's the lead actress. Nishi is on the call from Mauritius, which is actually midnight, I believe.
Midnight. Yeah, it's midnight.
Thanks for being with.
Hi.
Maybe we can kick this off with just talking about shooting elsewhere rather than in Canada. What were the challenges behind that?
So, well, the film, the idea of the film was to shoot in Mauritius, where I was born. Came in Canada, I believe now it's like almost 20 years. So the challenges of shooting remote is basically you just have to work on Zoom, just like we're doing for the pre-production. So that was done in 2019, right before COVID, but we were ahead of our time.
Yeah.
And beside that, the team who came from Canada was the producer, Guillaume Collin, and the art director, Valérie Jeanne, and the DOP, Antoine, and his assistant. So we all came in and we worked with the motion team, the local team. They have production companies in Mauritius, and we started working with the motion team and worked with the motion actress.
So Nishi and Daniel, I wonder if you guys can talk a little bit about, you know, how you came to this film and what that process was like. Nishi, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. In fact, Vincent and I, we have a friend in common, and he introduced me to Vincent, and we talked about the movie briefly. Then, like I always say, the pre-prod, it remains the most important part in filmmaking. Then in 2018, when he came to Mauritius, when Vincent came to Mauritius, we met. And then with repetitions and all, I got to meet the whole team. It was quite nice. Yeah, nice experience.
Great. And Daniel, how did you end up working on the film?
For me, I guess it was a long time coming because Vince and I, we went to film school together, the Mel Hoppenheim School of Cinema, and then we worked on a documentary that he did also about Mauritius called I've Seen the Unicorn that I edited with him. And so, yeah, we've just had a history of working together for quite a long time, and our schedules lined up, and yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
So, I mean, this is, it's really a film about ANIKSHA and sort of her independence as a woman, but you're also looking at the ideas of sort of this cheap labor that's being used to serve European countries and the kind of cultural colonization that's happening with ANIKSHA and the people around her. So I'd love for you to, Vincent, for you to talk about, you know, what inspired this film and sort of where did it come from?
Yeah, so the impulse was to have a film in one of the industries of Mauritius, who's always had a history of colonization, from the sugarcane factories to tourism, and now the call centers. And it's the call center is a little bit different because it gives a lot of opportunities to young Mauritians compared to the sugarcane, which was rooted in slavery. So, but the call centers still have this old habits of colonizers coming in, infantilizing the workforce, and not having possibilities of going up in the company. So usually what happens, it would be an expat, called an expat, not an immigrant, but an expat coming in the island and working to be the supervisor, the boss, the manager, and that relationship automatically forms of the structure of power is already there. So that was the impulse of the film, and how I wanted to look at this the call center industry in Mauritius, which gives a lot of opportunities to the young Mauritian, but at the same time perpetuates this structure of power.
Right. So, Nisha, I'd love for you to talk about what was it like reading the script and meeting this character, you know, and what were the kinds of conversations that you had with Vincent along the way? Because it's such a great sort of, it's a magnetic performance, you know. So I'd love to hear about what that was.
Well, I can relate a bit to ANIKSHA because ANIKSHA, she comes from the typical Mauritian Hindu family. And there are many girls coming from this type of family where they struggle at a certain point of life between their job, their family, and their self, their own self. So yeah, there is this patriarchal society's pressure. And then there are lots of expectations from the society itself. The fact that I got to play this role, I felt a bit relatable, like any other girls would. And in like manner, I would say a few years ago, society would see us women working at home, like taking care of the family and all. Nowadays, it's more like we find women in different fields. So there is kind of a contrast. So what I see in ANIKSHA is the transition from the old society and ANIKSHA who is trying to find herself in the contemporary society. So yeah, there's this struggle, and it is a struggle which is ongoing nowadays itself. So yeah, I can fully relate to ANIKSHA, and it was a great experience, like to play her role. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Daniel, if you can talk a little bit about the editing process. What was it like to receive all this amazing footage of all these, you know, and what is it? What is your relationship with Vincent like compared to other directors? And you know, is he hands off? Is he hands on? I'd love to hear about that.
Well, for this one, it was a bit different because the previous one we worked on was a documentary. And that documentary, you know, like we got in the dirt with that one, and like at one point I remember I was like living at Vince's house as we were editing that. But this one, like, because the script was something that he had been working on for quite a few years, I believe, and it was really worked. And like the way it works in Canada is you know, you get grants for your scripts and then for the production. And so the script was very well formulated, and so often when you get to the editing stage on something that hasn't gone through that process, you're kind of like reworking it again. And in this one, it was just like we were just like, you know, for the most part, finding that like everything that he had hoped for was actually there, you know, which sometimes doesn't happen. So it was kind of cool. It was pretty streamlined. There were a few sequences that we had to puzzle over, but yeah, it was a nice process.
So we're almost out of time here. I just want to round off by talking to you, Vincent, a little bit about, you know, you've had success with some festivals. One of your previous films played at Berlin, this played at TIFF. I would love to hear about, because your films are, you know, so they're dealing with colonization and very specific questions about representation. Can you talk about what the response to your work has been like, both sort of after it's finished and shown and before the production even begins in terms of finding funding and stuff like that?
In Canada, the response was excellent. Crying Conch, which was shot in Haiti 5-6 years ago, I believe, that had a really interesting response in terms of the Haitian communities in the States. It played at Horizon Festival, and it toured with that festival for a long time in Miami and New York, Brooklyn, where there's strong Haitian communities. So, and for ANIKSHA, it's been a weird year. for ANIKSHA. We were hoping for Nishi to come and present the film, but thank you for having us here and being able to bring Nishi live on. I haven't seen Nishi in maybe 2 years now, and
2 years, yeah, that's right.
Getting to chat, but so the response was really good, and I think moving on, there's a more need for that type of film that speaks of subject that everyone can relate to, but in a very different context, different perspective. So it brings new ideas, new perspective in play. And I've been lucky so far to get the grants to make those films.
And your most recent films have been set not in Canada. So is that a trend that you think you'll carry on, maybe going back to your home country and shooting in Mauritius, or does this feel like a specific moment in your body of work?
I do want to go back and shoot film because of creating a national cinema in Mauritius. There's a few filmmakers in Mauritius, and I want to be part of those voices coming from a perspective maybe that's been shaped a little bit differently being in Canada, and coming back and seeing things evolve. When we did I've Seen the Unicorn, I went in a perspective of seeing something, but I've seen different things. So the country has changed, a lot has changed in the last 20 years, and that's very exciting to film there and see those changes. But I also intend to shoot in Canada too. Mauritius is not exclusive. I often say that I'm an island filmmaker making films in Montreal Island, Haiti, or Mauritius.
All right, I think that's a great spot to wrap up. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Nishi, and thank you, Vincent, for sharing the film with us and taking time to chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks to you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for sticking around. We're going to talk about our final film, The Call. And we're here with multi-hyphenate actor, director, writer. Barbara, tell us why on earth you would want to have so many titles on a short film.
You know, I don't know, because I wanted to put myself through hell, maybe. I don't know. I guess because I'm a control freak is the answer, the real answer. Yeah.
But yeah, talk to us. Tell us about like the challenges of literally doing so many jobs on set.
Okay. Well, so two of the roles that I inhabited were director and producer, and so my director hat would have to speak to the producer hat, and the director part of me wanted to get a giant snake and shoot it outside. And the producer side was like, you can't do that, that would be way too dangerous and expensive. So we had to compromise with each other and get a little snake and shoot it inside.
Yeah. It's a film that is about, it feels like it's about ancestry. It feels like it's about ancestral trauma. And it's so visually striking as well, which is what I loved about it so much. It starts off with this motif of the lead character being cut between these two colors, right? So I'd love to hear more from you about what the inspiration for it was and how you approached it all visually as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to think about cultural difference and the way that two different cultures would see the same subject matter. And I had learned that signs of mental illness are seen in some traditional cultures as signs that the ancestors are calling you to speak to the living on their behalf. And I I thought, well, what would happen if somebody, you know, originally came from that culture and is now in North America and has no understanding of that? What would that feel like? So I wanted to sort of shoot it like a horror film, like a traditional North American horror film, but have, you know, it unfold as if, you know, what's actually happening is a call from the ancestors.
Right. That's fantastic. The editing is so amazing as well. You know, it's I think one of the best edited films I've seen this year.
Oh, awesome.
Can you talk about what the process was like editing it?
Well, we were just talking about something like that. Is just having so much time for the edit, you know, and just I like to find things in the edit, and that this film was no different. And I think it's just part of the process and going like, does this moment work? Does this moment work? And there was so much that we shot a lot more than what ended up in the film, because it was like, I don't feel like this is you know, something that we thought in the script was sort of questionable, but we shot it anyway. And then I thought, I'm not sure that this is honoring the message that we want to give. And then it kept, you know what I mean? I rely a lot on instinct and going, does this feel right? Does this feel right? And sort of that was my editing process until it was like, okay, this is the film.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes in it is when she's arguing with her dad outside, and you know, she's a very anxious character, but her dad keeps yelling at her to salt the steps, which I thought it's both hilarious and tragic. And to me personally, it felt like it was drawing this dichotomy between, you know, there's a lot of stuff happening to her that's out of her control, but her dad is telling her to do the one thing that is in her control. You know, you can salt the steps. And you're a new mom, right?
Yeah.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you so much.
And this might be a heady question, but you know, you shot this a while ago, and I'm just curious to hear, you know, did having a kid change your perspective on this kind of, you know, it felt like a very parent-child story in a way that you're telling. Did it add to that perspective at all? And you know, you can be honest and say it didn't if it didn't, but I was just curious.
So, I mean, can you say it again? I don't want to.
Yeah, well, just becoming a parent, did that change your perspective on this film specifically, and sort of how you felt about parent-child relationships and what you were trying to say about that in the film?
Well, the biggest thing that I think about with having my child is that I think that this film specifically stayed with me because it's, you know, I made it for my ancestors, and it stayed with me too. And I named my daughter Lena, and that is a family name, and that was really important to me. And so I think that just the going through the journey of this film made me have a new, like, it may not be the ancestral relationship that I would have traditionally to go back in time, but I feel like I do now have, I am honoring my ancestors and will keep that as a part of my, you know, daily practice.
All right, great. I want to go back to acting and directing a little bit, because that to me is something that is so kind of, you know, directing is so difficult on its own. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that was like here, and in very specific ways, sort of what the process was like? Would you, you know, shoot a scene and then go back and watch it for playback? And what was that process like for you on set?
Yeah. It was actually really interesting because part of the grant that I got from the Canada Council for the Arts was about process work. And so there, I wanted to do something try things as a director with my actor myself. And but I also used my producer Rob to help me execute some of the things that I would do anyway. But one of the things that I did was I asked my producer to show me some traumatic images before some of the shooting, as an exercise. And
before like right before you're calling action, or
right before I'm calling action.
Okay.
And I didn't call action myself. I had him call action. But I thought that it was useful in that my head was all over the film in so many aspects, and I was worried that my head wouldn't be in the moment as an actor, because I was directing and involved in so many aspects of the film. And so doing that was able to sort of focus me and surprise me in a way that I wasn't able, to get otherwise.
So you're all kinds of artistic. You do a lot of music. You've done a lot of acting in the past. So is this is acting, directing something that you want to continue doing, or would you rather focus more on directing going forward? Or what?
Yeah,
How
I'd
did
like
that
to focus more on directing and writing specifically. I think I've done that, and it's hard. I want to be able to, I want to see what the process is like without worrying about my acting, and really focusing on, I think I have that skill to be able to work with actors, being an actor myself. But I want to be able to use that skill with other actors going forward.
Right.
And I think that's.
Oh, are we out of time?
You have one more question, don't you?
Well,
you always have one more question.
I'm just curious, what was it like working with the other actors on the film?
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
George Saremba and Jane Moffat are just wonderful people, and they remind me of my parents. And they were really generous with me, and we had lovely rehearsals together before we shot, and it's really awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's such a we met years ago in University, Barbara, and it was so amazing to see this and how well it came out, and I can't wait to see what else you're going to make.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Barbara. Thanks for chatting with us today. And thank you for having this amazing film. And I guess I should probably thank all of the filmmakers, because this is the wrap up.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us for the Q&A, and hope you check out more amazing Canadian Film Fest films.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank
Bye.
you.